what parts of yourself have you been told are too much, but they're actually things that you want your message to be around? Now, I say this because you probably don't have a niche problem. You probably have an identity misalignment problem, which means your offers aren't meant to be confined by a label. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Chaos to Clarity podcast. My name is Maggie, and I am your host. I'm your business mentor and your human design expert. And today we are talking about one of my favorite things and maybe the most controversial thing that I might talk about. And that is escaping niche paralysis, which really comes down to offer confusion, niche confusion, overthinking, and just all of the things that go into choosing a niche. And if you are cringing as I'm saying niche and you're like, I'm never picking a niche, Maggie, never. I invite you to listen to this. And if you've chosen a niche, I also invite you to listen to this and just think about, how can you clarify your offer, your niche a little bit more? Because if you've been listening to the podcast for any amount of time, you'll know I love to bring in the energetics of human design and gene keys, but I also love to give you, real world strategy that either I've lived in my nearly 20 years of business, or I love to give you things that I have helped my clients realize, right? That they've come to these realizations for. So something I want to ask you at the top of the episode here is, what parts of yourself have you been told are too much, but they're actually things that you want your message to be around? Now, I say this because you probably don't have a niche problem. You probably have an identity misalignment problem, which means your offers aren't meant to be confined by a label, which for everyone who's like, I'm not choosing a niche, you're probably cheering, right? And for everyone who has chosen a niche, you're like, oh no, maybe even, oh shit, right? But here's the thing. Your offers, they're meant to express your energetic purpose. So from a human design and gene keys perspective, using your defined centers, but also using your incarnation cross or your activation sequence in the gene keys, using those tools to really further clarify your offer is only going to amplify what you're doing. And it's really going to show you that, like, the difference in your niche, right? So let's get a little bit into the niche myth. Now, I know a lot of business coaches are going to tell you to pick a niche. And I also am one of those business coaches who will tell you, please pick a niche. Because here's the thing, when you pick a niche, when you pick a demographic to work with. Now, niche and demographic are two different things. They can be under the same, but they are two different things. When you choose something to do, it narrows down who you're going to work with, who you're going to resonate with. And ultimately, that is what we want, because yes, you can serve anyone, but you cannot serve everyone, right? You can serve anyone, but you can't do that. Like, you can't be everything for everyone, right? And a lot of people who they created a business, they've seen some success, they've sold some things, and now all of a sudden those things might not be working. So they've added more things and they've done this and they've tweaked that. And all of a sudden their niche has gone from this thing over here to like this monster, and now they don't know what to do. That's a lot of what I help people do. I help you figure out where your niche needs to be. Yes, people in the online world will tell you you have to niche down. And for all my Manny gens, for everyone who considers themselves a multi-passionate entrepreneur, that is going to feel like a straitjacket to you. And you might even tell that person to go climb a tree because you're not going to niche down. But here's what I want you to realize. You don't have too many things. You have not enough integration. Okay. So when you have all of these offers, right? Say you are a coach and you have your big main offer and then you've got all these little other things, right? Or you've created 27 different companies in the last 3 weeks because you're really excited for all these different things. Okay. Now, a lot of the time it winds up that you think you're being narrow when you're niching down. However, it's more about how people resonate with you. So niching down doesn't have to be this like, I only help women age 29 who drink a grande vanilla latte twice a week from Starbucks and live by the ocean in a small town with 3 kids and 2 dogs. Right? That's a demographic. That's a type of person. Yeah, cool. Great, good. We love that. But you're probably not really lit up to only serve that kind of person. And here's where the gene keys and human design really come in clutch. So when you think about what is that thing that you want to be known for? And that's why at the beginning of the episode, I asked you, what parts have you been told are too much, but are things you actually want to talk about? Talk about them on social media, because now people are going to start to see, oh, wow, she actually talks about this thing. And for me, it was human design and gene keys that I was afraid to talk more about because I'm like, I don't know, are people going to resonate with it? But I was very in my head about that, right? So I was doing too many things that weren't integrated, right? I kind of had this human design, gene keys stuff, business coaching, podcast, like there was no through line. And the best way to amplify your reach and niche is to have that through line, to have your client journey. So really, if we think about niching, right? Niching down, if your client journey, if you don't know how people go from cold to sold with you, right? If you don't have that journey, there's probably holes in that journey. So people are getting lost because you don't have enough integration between your social media and your high ticket offer and whatever steps are in between. So part of my Chaos to Clarity brand and the magnetic method is that it's not necessarily about doing less. It's also not necessarily about doing more. It's more about doing what is energetically clear. And that might make no sense at all. Okay. And that's why I created the program. That's why I created Chaos to Clarity. That's why I created the magnetic method, is to help people understand, how do I understand what is energetically clear for me? Because I can give you all the business advice. I can give you all the strategies. I have all the things, right? I have all the workbooks, all the things laid out, blah, 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 da, 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 da. I'll do that. And this is something that I do in the 20 leads in 2 weeks challenge. You go and you figure out, what is that thing? How do I want to connect with people? How do I want to speak to people? What does that mean for me? So if we think about everything that I've just talked about in the last couple minutes, right? I want to share a little story about when I tried to pick just one thing. And I think this is so funny because when I started my photography business, it was 2007, had spent I spent 6 months in Spain in 2006. I finished out college. I came home and I was like, I'm going to be a photographer. And at the time, it was the housing crisis of 2007 or whatever, market crash. I don't know. And, I took a corporate job because I was like, okay, I don't have like all my ducks in a row. So like, if I can work at a corporate job and make some money, then I can kind of just build this business on the side. So by the end of 2013, I was like ready to peace out of corporate. I rage quit, for lack of better terms. And I was like, this is it. I'm going to be a photographer. Done. Signed, sealed, delivered. I am not even kidding you. Within like a month of me quitting, I was like, oh, and I am going to get my certification to be a yoga teacher, which is cool and great and wonderful, because at the time I was like, well, okay, yes, my photography can be very seasonal. If I have, some of this regular quote unquote teaching opportunities, that'll be great. And I I just think about all the times in my life I've tried to only do one thing, and there's just never one thing, right? Something else always finds me. And that's not to say that like I'm only meant to do one thing, or that it's bad if you do or do not do just one thing. But I just want to say, for me, I know that having those, like, the spice of life essentially sprinkled in is important for me personally. It's important for me because then I kind of have these different things that I get to do throughout the week, and it keeps me out of that mundane, like, oh man, this is kind of boring, right? Because in business there is quite a bit of stuff that's actually very boring. And if I were to only do photography, for example, that would be very boring for me, right? I find editing very boring. I love taking the pictures. Editing is so boring for me. So a lot of times I will either pay someone to edit my photos, or I will, just do my best to be very diligent about doing them. And I also, in order for me to edit all of my photos, I typically listen to, an audiobook so that I have something to keep me out of the mind loop of, oh, this is boring. Because that's just what I've associated it with. So all that to say, let us get back on track, right? Okay. So we're talking about, really understanding your identity alignment. So just before, right, I told you the little story about picking one thing, and I think it's hilarious. It's something that I love about myself, that I can't just choose one thing, because like variety is the spice of life. So like, why choose one when I can have multiple? And it's just a through line for me. And it's very much about transformation. However, I have learned that over the last 20 years, when I've said yes to the wrong things, it feels like I'm stuck in mud. When I say yes to the right things, when I allow my body to feel the excitement and to understand, is this a sacral yes? Is this not a sacral yes? Is this a no, right? When I understand that, and when I act on those sacral yeses, the excitement, and really utilize my innocence motivation to be like, oh, this feels so exciting right now. Am I still going to be excited about this? That is where and how I maintain the energy to do all the things that I do. And I love it. Now, if you're a projector, a reflector, a manifestor, even a generator, you might be going, that sounds like a lot of work. And that's okay. I just want to also remind you of that. What I do is not for everyone. So let's get into a little bit of the identity alignment, which brings in your G center and your profile line. So just before, we talked a little bit about the niche myth and how niching down can feel like a straitjacket, but I want you to think about your niche as how you resonate with people, or how people resonate with you. It is literally all about the vibes, people. If you're not vibing, it's probably not for you. And I really want you to lean into that lit up energy, because it's not necessarily like being so lit up. Oh, I just think about like all of the reflectors and projectors that I've worked with, because I've worked with quite a few. And just how excited they get when it's like, oh my gosh, I can really do that. And like how that just amplifies their energy, and you can just see them visibly relax. It's so cool. It's like, it will never not amaze me. Okay, so let's get into identity alignment, because This is where you are going to connect your identity and your brand resonance, right? So we're using your G center, your profile lines, and I want you to think about your G center, which is, if you're looking at your body graph, it is the middle diamond shape. This is your magnetic field. So this is things like your identity, your direction, your frequencies. And if your G center is defined, so I have a defined G center, right? You are probably going to attract through consistent identity energy. Now, if someone were to, say things about me like, oh, she really knows what she's doing, she's really confident, right? That is a lot of the time due to my defined G center. Now, that's not to say I don't feel that I always feel confident, because I don't always feel confident, but I do give off that essence, right? Now, so that's when your G center is defined. Probably consistent energy, you probably feel a little more confident. When you're undefined, you're here to amplify and mirror other people's desires until clarity emerges. So it's going to kind of look like you're trying things on a lot. Now, that's not to say that if you have an undefined G center, you are not confident, because I've met a lot of people who have undefined G centers who are very confident people. So I think it's very unique. It's so cool to me how, some of the shadows and things that will show up, like if I'm feeling unconfident in something, that is a key for me, because I have a defined G center. That is a key for me to be like, ooh, I don't feel confident in that. This feels uncomfortable. I need to, that's a cue for me to explore, is this actually a yes or is it a no, right? And to kind of tap into my sacral. And that is because I'm a sacral manifesting generator. Now, if you have an undefined G center, that may wave, that might ebb and flow a little bit. So you have to take into consideration, a bunch of different things. And this is why people work with me, so you can start to understand this magnetic field. Your G center is how you pull people in. So next up, I want to talk just a little bit about your profile lines, because this shows you how you're designed to connect. So for me, I'm a 1-4, right? The 1 line brings all the depth and mastery. And really the 1 line is just here. The 1 line is the learning line. I love to learn, love to read, love to understand new things. And then the 4 line, I love to tell you all about it. Right? And some of that is also my defined throat. But here's the thing. Your 4 line builds community. And by your, I mean my. If you also have a 4 line. 4 lines build community and influence through relationships. So a lot of the people that I like to work with, and this is why I love the DMs so much, because it allows me to build community and influence authentically. It's why I teach about DMs, because even if you're not a 4 line, even if you're not a 1 line, you can still utilize these things to create a community, because right now what people want is community. People are craving community and authentic relationships, not necessarily another thing. So now let's take the combination of the G center and your profile lines, because when you have that combination, your niche is going to really kind of start to reveal itself. Okay, you're going to start being who you're meant to be, and you're going to connect so much easier. So let's think about how you can connect your offers and your content to all of this, right? So when I think about how my content and my offers work together, I love to go deep into research. And this can bite me in the butt. I'm not going to lie. There are times where I can't get enough. I need more research because I need the proof. And that is the shadow of the 1 line. I have to see the proof. I have to see that it's working before I actually really, really feel solid commitment. Okay. Now, you might not feel that, and that's okay. But this is something that I'm not going to lie, I've struggled a lot with not over researching instead of just acting. I have to find the balance. It goes back to my life's work. My personality sun gate is gate 29, 29.1. So that's the yes gate. I have a tendency to say yes to everything. And that bites me in the butt because I'm going to wind up half-assing something at some point in time. So that is definitely something that I have learned and grown, right? I've started to understand, and not started, I've been understanding what it means when things are a yes and a no. However, it's something that took quite a while for me to understand. And it took quite a while for me to understand how to connect my offers and my content and my authority, right? How this big thing that is my brand really works. And some of this might get a little bit clearer when we think about the throat as well as the Jupiter placements, which is messaging and magnetism. Now, if you're listening to this and you're like, this all sounds really familiar, because it is. This is something that when we do an offer audit, this is something I go through all of this with you in an offer audit, because these are things that really will set you up for so much success in your offer and provide so much more clarity. So when we think about the throat gates and the Jupiter placements, which is messaging, magnetism, and money, your Jupiter placements are your money placements. So thinking about this, thinking about the energetics of tangible communication strategy, which sounds like really huge words. However, your throat gates, right? If you have defined or undefined throat, but also the gates that are there, those are your microphones for your chart. That's how you express your purpose. So for me, I have gate 8, which is self-expression that uplifts the unique. I also have gate 1, which is the creative direction and originality. So both of those, I love to uplift people, right? I see so much creative direction and originality, right? I love that. So each gate that you have defined sets a flavor for self-expression that helps you shape your marketing tone and really your natural voice. Now, what happens if you have a completely open throat or if you have an undefined throat? So if you have an undefined throat, chances are you have some hanging gates. So you can look at those hanging gates and you can just notice what are the themes of those gates. You can go and Google those gates. You can also book an offer audit with me. The link is in the show notes below, and we will go through those. I'll help you figure out what your microphone is. Now, if you have a completely open throat with no gates defined, it's not that you don't have a throat. It's not that you don't have a voice. Your voice can ebb and flow. Remember before when I said that open and undefined centers, those are your mirrors. Those are the places where, you can really look to things that you can amplify, you can mirror others, you can really try things on and see, oh, this feels good. This does not feel good. So that is the benefit, so to speak, someone with an undefined or open throat. Now, your Jupiter placements. These are your prosperity codes, okay? And these are really the archetypes that show how your gifts create abundance. So for me, those things are, my Jupiter placements are 19.3 and 13.4. Now, the 0.3 and 0.4, that is for another episode. So gate 19, gate 13. But for me, my abundance gifts are connection, sensitivity, deep listening, and those really get to turn into my wealth keys, if you will. So when I combine those three things that I just talked about, right? Connection, sensitivity, deep listening, which is why I feel more called to be a mentor than a coach. Like, I love being a coach, but like being a mentor feels so much more like me because I get to listen and I get to share perspective, but I don't necessarily have to give that, like, do this, then that, then that, then that, right? Where coaching felt more like teaching. And don't get me wrong, I love to teach too, but when I can hear someone and then repeat back, here's what you said, but here's what I hear you saying. Let's explore this. We get so much more done. So being able to combine those things in my Jupiter placements, right? Connection, sensitivity, deep listening, combining those three into my content it helps my content stop sounding like everybody else, right? So when I utilize my throat gates, when I utilize my defined throat, when I utilize my Jupiter placements, that helps me create content that really stands out and it doesn't just blend in. It starts to attract the people who I am vibing with, right? Because I'm literally speaking from my energetic design. So if your messaging feels off, right? We talked a little about your offer feeling off, but if your messaging feels off or generic, it's not necessarily a copy problem. It's a frequency problem. It also, if you're using AI, it might be a bad AI prompt problem. But again, that is for another episode. Because I'm just going to say it here. The better the prompt, the better the output, but always add your voice at the end, right? Always add your voice into what you're doing. So let's move into redefining your niche through the gene keys. Now, I know I've sprinkled it in throughout this episode, but I do want to talk a little bit about something that my mentor, Kayla G, and I, and the rest of our group were talking about in regards to your niche. Now, a traditional niche, if you will, if I were to ask you, what is your niche? You would probably say something like, oh, I help women entrepreneurs who are in their 30s, redefine their love of eating chocolate at night. I don't know, right? Like, I have no clue, but it's more demographics than like actual niche, because when you look at it through the human design and gene keys, right, your niche is your frequency. So it's literally your vibes. If the vibe is off, it's not for you. And I want you to really think about that. Like, have you ever been in a situation where you're like, the vibes are not vibing? Vibes are not vibing. I want you to, right? Like, if the vibes aren't vibing, it's not for you. It's okay to say no. It's okay to say no. So thinking about, and this is something that Kayla taught us and shared with us, that, thinking about your activation sequence, which is your life's work, evolution, radiance, and purpose spheres, which is also your incarnation cross in your human design chart. So it's the first two gates on your personality and design sides. Now, your ideal clients are people who are ready to meet you in that frequency, which means they're going to resonate because your shadows and gifts mirror their transformation. Let me just say that again for the people in the back, right? Ideal clients are people who are ready to meet you in your activation sequence frequency. They resonate because your shadows and your gifts mirror their transformation. So something I want you to contemplate is, what struggles have you moved through that have shaped your deepest gifts? Now, if you're like, how do I find this information? Right? You can go to the Gene Keys website, pull your Gene Keys, and you'll see on the Gene Keys website, it gives you the gift, the city gift, and shadow. So your shadows and your gifts are going to mirror people's transformation that they want to see. So for me, my life's purpose, my life's work is gate 29. So the shadow of that is half-heartedness or half-assing things. And I've talked a lot about that in this episode, right? That's the shadow. The gift of that is commitment. So how can I commit myself to the things that I actually want to be doing? Which comes down to, am I saying yes to the things that actually light me up? Or am I just saying yes to everything and half-assing it? Because as I have discovered over the last, 5 years, if I'm doing things that I'm only like half interested in, I'm not going to love it as much as the things that I'm actually all interested in. Hence why we were talking about the gene keys and human design, right? I love this stuff. I can't stop talking about this stuff. Okay. So that's why I started bringing it in, because it just kept showing up more and more and more. And I'm like, man, it just works so well in business. And I had to release the fear that people are going to be like, because honestly, those people aren't for me. They're not the people that I want to serve. The people that I want to serve are people like you who are listening, who are like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. Why didn't I find this sooner? Okay. So if we think about my life's work gene key, right? My personality sun gate, going from half-heartedness to commitment to devotion. So my frequency is literally calling in women who are tired of doing half-assed things, or tired of half committing, and they're ready to go all in, but they're afraid of choosing the wrong thing. I'm here to help them figure out what they are actually committed to. Now, I would love to leave you here with a bit of practical application, because I think for some of us, it's all well and good to hear this. However, it can feel a little choppy to actually apply this. Okay. So for manifesting generators, right? When we think about testing offers by your type and strategy, because if your offer is lit, people are going to love it. If you're lit up about your offer, people are going to love it, right? So if your offer's lit, people are going to love it. So for my Manny Gens, don't overthink it. Respond and refine, because we as manifesting generators, we love to pivot. We love to pivot. Sometimes I get so annoyed with myself because I'm like, do we have to pivot again? But here's the thing. When you can stop overthinking, you're responding and going, oh, okay, this isn't working how I thought it was. Let's pivot just a little bit. Let's refine it just a little bit. So instead of going, yes, I'm all in, and then all of a sudden like, oh, this feels gross, and I'm going to 180 pivot. No. That's where you're going to feel burnt out, right? So instead of overthinking, should I change this? Should I not? Respond and refine to those things. So let's move on for Managens, right? Following your sacral, yes. Test it and pivot if it feels meh. Now, if you are an emotional manifesting generator, give yourself a minute, right? Allow yourself to feel the sacral yes or no, but also give yourself an extra bit of time to allow for that emotional wave, because your clarity is going to come through movement, not mental loops. So if you are constantly spinning the wheels, that's going to keep you in that mental loop, right? You want to be able to flow. Sometimes that literally means standing up and walking out of the room, doing a little walkabout and coming back to allow for that clarity to set in. Now, generators, you're going to wait for your consistent sacral response before committing long-term. I cannot stress that enough. And same thing if you're an emotional generator, you want to wait for that wave to come through. You want to wait for the sacral response, and then you also want to wait for the wave, because that's going to give you the answer. Projectors, you're waiting for recognition. Your offers will magnetize when the right audience sees your brilliance. Now, I know projectors, you get a bad rap because you're like, I have to wait for that invitation. But let me just say, you get to decide what that invitation looks like for yourself. Okay. Manifestors, follow your urges. Don't wait, inform and go. Tell the people. And manifestors, I honestly probably don't even need to tell you this. I don't work with a lot of manifestors because they know. They are informing, they are going, they are on their way, right? Reflectors, experiment with timing. Okay. Think about your clarity and how it unfolds across a month, across 28 days, a lunar cycle. So, to wrap up this episode, what idea or offer lights you up right now? I would love for you to slide into my DMs. Tell me, right? Find me on Instagram at Maggie Lynn, Lynn mentoring. Tell me what idea or offer lights you up right now. And I would love for you to try sharing or beta testing it this week and just notice how your energy responds. Does it feel ease? Does it feel excitement? Do you feel resistance? What is happening for you in this? So I'm so excited. This has been such a fun episode to record. And next week, I want to make sure that you stay with me because next week we're talking about authentic voice activation. So I know earlier in this episode, I talked a little bit about your throat and about some of the gates. We're going to get into a little bit more of that next week. So make sure you subscribe, you like, you share, you comment, all the things. Make sure we're besties on Instagram. Slide into my DMs. Let me know what part of this episode resonated the most. And I cannot wait to talk to you again next week.